welcome back.
Hello.
It's myself and we've got Stevie along with us tonight. Today, as per the title, we're going to be looking at whether or not whiskey is boring. But I mean, before you get your pitchforks out and your lynchies and whatever, it's not a definite answer, I suppose. And the fact that we're doing this probably gives away the answer that we've kind of come up with, without spoiling it too much.
Stuart's words, by the way, boring, not mine.
If everybody's chilled, we've got a dram of. It's a dram from Stevie's selection. A Bladnock 14-year-old.
Yep, nearly did.
Nearly finished. 46.7% ABV, and what cask is it? A certain cask?
I think it's an Oloroso cask, if I remember right.
I'm just going to check to see if anybody's in the chat to see if we've got any feedback. There we go. That's a bit echoey. See if we've got any.
We're just talking to ourselves.
No, there's 5 people here. So if anybody can give us a heads up that the audio is all good and that the video is all good, that would be much appreciated. Because we're kind of sitting in the dark. We're just talking to ourselves and we don't know if this is coming through properly or not. So hopefully it is, and hopefully you can hear us, no bother. So yeah, we're going to get down to the topic, I suppose. And how I wanted to start it was, I think where you are in your journey can dictate whether or not something's boring. Whether you're a seasoned drinker, whether you're a novice just getting into drinking, or whether you're like completely on the opposite end of the scale to like a complete whiskey geek. I'm going to let Jura out. Jura's actually here with us, so this is going to be fun. He's jumping about trying to get out. I wanted to talk about. Oh, there we go. There's Brandon. All good. So hopefully that should. I was hoping that would show up as well. Oh no, it's not showing up. Oh well. I'll need to just read them out if people comment. But,
yeah, that's fine.
I was hoping it was going to come up above us. Actually, it might be because it's. There we go. All good. So there's Brandon there saying all good. The first topic the first area we're going to cover was supermarket bottles, and we were at Stevie's dad's last night, and we kind of discussed this there as well. Do you want to tell them what we had last night?
Yeah, we had a Tamnavulin, was it a Portwood finish?
Yeah.
A bargain bottle, I think it's about 35 quid. It was 24 quid when it was on offer. We didn't know what we were trying. Although I think I offended the guy that actually got the bottle, because I joked with my dad, "You're starting with a cheap and nasty," but it was cheap, but it certainly wasn't nasty. In fact, I've actually got one. I'm looking at it just now. So, in terms, I don't know where you really want to sort of go with this. I think we touched on this last night. Actually, there's such a variety available at the supermarkets, and I guess there's a bit of a stigma about, well, if it's at the supermarket, it's cheap, it's not going to be as good. But then when you think about it, actually, what would be the point of flooding all the supermarkets with crap whiskey? Because that's where you're getting people interested in your product to begin with, not the 70 quid, 80 quid, 150 quid bottles. It's the bottles that go for 50 quid and under, as people have to start somewhere. So
I think at our level, and probably the people watching, it depends, would go into a supermarket and say that, even you and I would probably go into a supermarket and say that the selection there is boring to us.
To be honest, I never actually look at the whiskey shelves in a supermarket. To be honest, it's just never on my. No, it's never on my. It's never on my radar, because the boss writes me a list, and if it ain't on a list, it's not there. So no, I don't
No,
I don't think a supermarket has been a place to go buy whiskey for some reason. I don't know why that is.
Yeah. I always go in and like always if I'm in Tesco or Asda or any supermarket, any of the big chains, because there's more than one big chain out there. I'm not sponsored by Tesco or Asda. Could you imagine that?
I get a wee bit from Morrison's, but just
I always go in and have a look and take a picture, and it's always the same, like Highland Park 12, some crap from Jura,
steady. It's a bit steady.
Glenfiddich 12. There's Lenny. Hi Lenny. Lenny's a mate from work. Used to work with him in my last rig. Since I changed.
Till you deserted him.
Till I deserted him. He lives up north, and he's right into his whiskey as well. Anyway, yeah, I think there's Jura normally. There's Highland Park. There's, like you say, that Tamnavulin I would say is an exception because it was a great starter whiskey, 40% ABV, and I wouldn't buy a bottle myself, but I enjoyed it as last night's starter to the tasting.
I mean, I have had a few surprises for the supermarket. So, again, is the question you posed. If you ask the question, is supermarket whiskey boring? I guess for a certain level of whiskey drinker, it is. But for people who generally don't go there and want to see what's available, it probably isn't. So again, it's back to your thing about where you are in the whiskey journey. Boring's a bit of a harsh word. The whiskey selection in the supermarket doesn't appeal for what I'm looking for, but it'll appeal to plenty of other people. Yeah, maybe appeal's a better word than it's less appealing to me.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I reckon we've got both the dogs. I reckon I would say that the supermarket whiskey for me is boring. Like I go in and I don't get terribly excited by what's on the shelf.
No, exactly. I mean, as I say, I don't even bother looking.
Aye.
I don't expect to see anything exciting there.
Whereas it would be nice to go in, and I'm not saying. I mean, back in the day, you used to get Springbank or Long Row on shelves, Tesco shelves. I just think it would be interesting to go into, or it'd be nice to be able to go into a supermarket, maybe not buy something like that, but if there was there's obviously Glencadam on the shelf, but if there was just something a little bit more exciting, I don't know, just a little bit different. But then I suppose it's like you say, it's the introductory to the distillery that they're wanting to output, and they're wanting to get people in with. So yeah, like I said, we're drinking Bladnoch 14-year-old currently. So I hope you've got, if you're able to. I don't know if Lenny's watching from work, but I suppose you'd have nothing better to do.
Was anybody else drinking in their hands, and what's the general opinion of anybody there on supermarket whiskey?
Yeah, do you think supermarket whiskey is boring? Is it boring to you? It definitely. We discussed this last night. Like, it definitely has its place. It's not to say this debate or discussion isn't to say that these things don't have their place. But I stick by that. I think supermarket whiskey is boring. Sometimes you go into different supermarkets or different shops. The one in Dice, for example, it's not really a supermarket, but it's a cost cutter, and he has like an immense selection of whiskey. Like, it's basically a whiskey shop, but it's a cost cutter, and I think that's exciting because without going in, you wouldn't know that he has that in there. But yeah, it'd be interesting to know, you guys, what you think. Is supermarket whiskey boring? And also, what do you have in your glass at the moment?
Is there any answers there?
Not yet. We've currently got, how many people we got in here?
So we're preaching to a bunch of sober people.
We've got 8 people in. Yeah. But they're watching. They're here. That's the main thing. Hopefully you have got a dram or able to get a dram.
For the record, I have had 2 or 3 surprisingly good whiskies from supermarket just accidentally. So I can think of when I first ever tried the Auchentoshan 3 Wood. I'd never tried an Auchentoshan before, and still to this day I think it's a cracking dram. The Tamnavulans are another one. There was another one a few years ago. There was a Glenlivet, a non-age statement one, and it was like, yeah, it's there's a place for all of these things, and I think if you get bored of the supermarket options, then you're already evolving and ready for the next level, which is to go to an outlet that maybe has more choice. So I think maybe supermarkets, because there's so many of them, capture the widest audience, and it's a great first step on the ladder. Because I often worry about pricing of whiskey in the last few years and stuff. If it wasn't for the supermarket stuff, how would people actually people get on the ladder? What would make somebody switch from a rum to a whiskey at some of the prices?
Yeah, it definitely, like you said, supermarket whiskey definitely has its place, but I'm gonna stick by my guns and put it in the boring category, for now. When do you think was the last time out with supermarket whiskey? When do you think the last time was that you were excited by a whiskey? Was it recently? Was it a while ago, or was there something that proper? Because I know what it was for me. If you want some time to think, and I can blather on.
I think no, I can answer it because it happens a lot.
Right.
And this is where I kind of, from a boring angle, I don't see it at all, because there's so much choice and so much going on in the market that one of my standout favourites last year was a Signatory Bunnahabhain. It was only 50-60 quid a bottle. One of my favourites for last year. I've got a 47-year-old blend for Thompson Brothers there.
That is fantastic stuff.
That blew me away. The first Ben Nevis I've ever really liked was a Stillwater Ben Nevis. At my dad's we've had a few different ones as well. He's got what's the Holliers one? It's the Holliers one. I can't remember what it is now.
What would you think? That's Neil's here. He's just saying he's got Arran quarter cask in his glass. Very seldom does he buy from the supermarket. The selection is definitely not good. That's what he's saying. It's not a great selection. Yeah, I don't think the selection is terribly great. And that's kind of I think like you say, where you are in your journey kind of dictates whether something's boring. Because a lot of these supermarket whiskies are 40% ABV, and that's not saying 40% ABV whiskies are bad. Letting June out again, because that Tamnavulin last night was a nice whiskey, a nice break, something different. And just because whiskies are chill filtered, or just because they have added colouring, I'd probably draw the line at added colouring. I don't think they should add colouring, but chill filtering, it doesn't make a whiskey bad. It just takes away some.
I think at the end of the day, regardless of what's on the label, you either like it or you don't.
Yeah.
And then, I'm not going to like something and then read the label and say, oh, it's had colouring in it. I might be a bit disappointed that they feel they had to use colouring in it. But if I enjoyed the whiskey, then okay, that's what's made that particular whiskey.
Yeah.
I think it's easy to get hung up on these things.
So I think the last time I was excited by a whiskey was like very recently in the mystery malts from Thompson Bros. I think some people are getting a bit bored of them now because they're coming out with them quite thick and fast.
They are quite fast with them.
And there's quite a large volume. It used to be, I think the first one was like 9 whiskies or something. It's now up to 15 whiskies or something like that. They've increased the quantity that they're releasing each time. But I still thought that was that was taking me back to when I was first getting into whiskey, when I was buying a bottle. And I know you can still do that. You can still buy a bottle and not know what it is until you've obviously opened it and tried it. But it was that novelty of just completely being in the dark and buying a bottle and taking an absolute gamble on something for the first time ever. And that really excited me. Even if you're going to get crap, that, I mean...
It's a good way to punt your stock if you're going to get rid of your stock.
It's a great way to punt your stock. Phil, who's moved over to Americas from Ireland, moved over to the US of A. The indie bottler argument back in the UK is where the fun is. The indie bottler, my contacts are playing up. The indie bottler segment back in the UK is where the fun is. Official bottlings of many of the big brands are underwhelming.
Yeah.
Now I'm stateside, I'm getting pretty enthused by the US single malts. That's good to know. It'd be interesting to know what...
Is there a recommendation there?
Yeah, have you got any recommendations, Phil, for US single malts? And we'd love to know from the chat, like, what's the last thing that's excited you? What's the last whiskey that's kind of maybe giving you, maybe a bit sad to say, but butterfly, something that's giving you a little bit of like, oh, that's not necessarily one that you've had to try, but one that you've seen on the shelf and you've been excited by.
I just thought another example. While people are responding, a couple of weeks ago we had...
I'll go see what the dogs are doing.
You stay here. What was it? Yeah, we had one of the old Dalmore cigar malts, the original ones. And they're a bit thin on the ground, but you can still pick them up. But it was
2005.
We come on to this later on. You're then looking at the sort of nostalgic element, and what memories does it bring back, and is it as good as you remember it was, and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I think I'm always excited to open a bottle and try something, which is dangerous because you end up opening more than you finish. That's the dangerous side of it.
So obviously Phil's brought up independent bottlers, and this is obviously a progression from supermarket whiskies, from when you're just starting out, and then you maybe go to specialty whiskey shops and you see independent bottlers. There's a different avenue to go down. I think there can be a bit of fatigue with independent bottlers, because at times it does feel like, depending on who it is, there's either too much out churn, too much whiskey coming out. Say Carnmore done it, Signature are kind of doing it at the moment. Their pricing's good, the whiskey they're coming out with's big names. But then also independent bottlers, a lot of them are bringing out similar whiskies. A lot of them have stock of Linkwood. You see Linkwood a lot, you see Glenelgin a lot, and it's what makes that. It waters it down for me. Does it make it exciting or does it make it boring, because they're all coming out with quite similar whiskey? And then, as we discussed last night, there's whiskey brokers that can sell by the bottle, so they can sell some bottles to one company and some bottles to another company, and it'll be extremely seldom that you get two whiskies that are exactly the same, because you would never buy them at the same time. But there is that sense of it's all coming from one place.
I think the independent bottlers are almost, in my opinion, a saviour of the whiskey industry, for me anyway. Because there's not a lot of experimentation in the big distilleries. They're looking for consistency, and that's what it's all about. But then you can take a whiskey from a particular distillery, and someone else takes it on board and looks after it in a different way, matures it in a different way. You buy, I don't know, maybe better quality casks even, because they've got less of the whiskey, so they want to make sure they maximise the quality. I think, and you can't buy them all. So, you know, Signatory was great for the marketplace last year because they put out a lot of stuff, and a lot of really good stuff at a really good price. You know, between £50-70, and obviously, like everything else, you can go up for there. But it's not like you can buy all of them.
So
and it's not like if Thompson Bros brought out a Tormore and Signatory brought out a Tormore and a Red Cask brought out a Tormore, you're not going to buy all three of them. I don't think, unless you're buying a shed load of the stuff, you're really going to get that saturation. If 5 different independent bottlers bring out a variation of a Tormore, you're not going to buy all 5. So I don't think it's spoiling anything for me. I think it does give people the choice if they have a preference to a specific independent bottler, they would maybe go that way. So, or if you're somebody, I've got a sister that researches whiskey all over the place, reads about it, and then lists the ones that the nose, the palate, and the flavour profile thinks would be the most appealing. So it depends on how you go about buying your whiskey, where it's like, oh, that's another Thompson Bros, I'm going to buy one of those, and I can understand why, because they bring out some cracking stuff. But I don't think you're ever going to buy the same whiskey from, even though it might be available from different independent bottlers, because there's so much variety out there. Why would you? I rarely buy the same whiskey twice.
No, I'm the same. A couple of points. So Signatory being good for the market, there's actually some that would argue that it's bad for the market. They're saying because of the pricing, people are saying that because of the pricing that they're coming out with, they can't compete. So it's almost like a race to the bottom. Look at the likes of Eddie Stobart in the UK. They started outpricing all their competition and ended up going bust. It's probably not going to happen to Signatory, but it's driving competition down, driving profits down, and how do people compete with that?
But not even Signatory though, because you get the same Canmore in the year or two before Signatory went through their big push last year. They were exactly the same. So what it tells me is it is achievable. Companies can, of the right size.
Yeah.
Maybe some companies are way too big and they can't make it economically work.
I think it's the other way about. I think it's the small companies.
The small companies are maybe in a better position because they're buying less. They're somehow making the economics work, because what I don't believe any of those companies are churning out a whiskey and not making money on it.
No. So I still think there's an element of, or a possibility to be bored, because independent bottlers, and not necessarily well established ones like Signatory, they probably won't be, or Douglas Laying, Hunter Laying, they probably won't be buying from brokers necessarily, but there is an element that could creep in where you could have 2 whiskies that are almost the exact same because they've bought from the same broker, they've bought from the same
yeah, but
bottler.
The chances of you buying it twice,
but the chances are slim. But then does that make it, I suppose there's still a range out there, there's still enough of a variety that you should never get bored.
I can't see it. I can't see the boredom element in independent bottlers at all. I see today there was some new rare finds bottles coming out, and there was at least, I think there was 5 of them, at least 3, and I was like, oh,
they sound good.
I wouldn't mind trying that.
So Phil's saying the single malts from US, or single is it single US single malts, Westland from Seattle, McCarthy's from Hood River, Oregon, or Origin, I don't know how the damn Yanks pronounce it, Stranahan's from Colorado, and Milden Mill from Nevada all make it excellent single malt, surprisingly good at young ages.
But are they made with malted barley or?
He does say US single malt, so I'm assuming
Right,
it
okay.
must be malted barley.
Okay.
You'll need to answer that for us, Phil. Danny's saying, evening folks, just sat at the bar in Glasgow Airport with a Glenmorangie Quinta Reuben. We got you a
Oh,
bottle of
that's yeah.
that in the glass. He says, supermarket whiskey isn't for me these days, but I do still have a look when I'm in the supermarkets. Yeah, I'm constantly looking just to see if there's anything intriguing.
Quinta Reuben's the port one, isn't it?
It's the port or the rum.
I think it's.
Might be port.
I've got that somewhere.
There are definitely some things worth picking up in the supermarket, but they are pinching the margins so much on the producers. I think you're going to be disappointed more than pleased these days. Yeah, that's true. Gav's saying hello from Edinburgh, and he's also saying no volume. He's saying can't hear you, but I think other people can hear us, Gav, so I don't know if maybe it's on our side. Phil, you seem to be commenting. I hope you can tell us that we've got volume. But yeah, I can see on our streaming software some volume skitting up and down, so hopefully you can hear us.
It's maybe a blessing if you can hear us all.
Phil's also saying, I also like the rye category in the US and was excited about the Kings County Empire rye, which is made of 80% NY grown rye and 20% English barley. He says spicy, oily and robust.
Oh.
Yeah, he says 100% malted barley. They've just finally got legal recognition as a category and now have proper technical file. So that's pretty cool.
I didn't realise you could get a single malt in the States
No,
yet.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So I think like with progressing to independent bottlers and me saying, sometimes I do find it hard when you've got Canmore or Signatory or whoever it is, any independent bottler, even Thompson Bros, and there's like Glen Elgin after Glen Elgin, and it's like hard to decide. Like, at times I'm like, I've had Glen Elgin so many times, like what can they do different? And I suppose that's the benefit of being an independent bottler.
But that's the trick, is they do tend to do something different. You know, you a whiskey that you would never buy from a distillery because you've tried it before, and then an independent bottler gets their hands on it and does something different with it, and you're like, you know, oh my God, there's just no comparison. They've just taken the same product and matured it in a different way, a more experimental way. I don't know, maybe smaller casks or.
Well, you look at your point's valid.
I've got a question for you though.
Okay.
Did you invite me just so you could come to my house and drink my whiskey, or did you actually bring whiskey?
Yeah. I only invited you on the live stream to drink your whiskey because I did not bring any whiskey. I will say that on record. I did not bring any whiskey.
I thought that was the case, and I'm just going to get up a wee second because I guess it'll be time for me to pour another.
I suppose your point's valid with like Dalmore. So you quite enjoy a Dalmore.
Yep.
But you're not going to get a cash strength Dalmore that's not been tampered with how they want to present it. So the only way you're going to get a naturally presented and different and unique Dalmore is to go independent bottlers. So yeah, I suppose there's that.
And you look at the colouring of some of them. Everybody, we all think Dalmore's a certain colour and texture, and then you go to an independent. But we had a rare finds one, and it was grey black in colour. It wasn't thin and treacly and heavily sherried. It tasted more like chocolate and coffee.
Yeah, it was like dirty water.
Yeah, it was a totally different experience. We're going to have a North Star Tullyburden 10-year-old Oloroso Barrique and Bourbon Barrel.
Clean this out a wee bit. Do you want yours cleaned out?
No, I'll be a heathen and just take it as it is.
Jura.
So,
that's because Ollie's barking for nothing. Sorry guys, this is so disjointed.
I did wonder on bringing another dog to the house, and we're left on our own in charge of the dogs, and we're huffing whiskey. That's a bad combination. Just while we're waiting on Stuart dealing with animals, another interesting blast from the past by us recently. It was a Signatory Supreme single malt blend. It came out in the late 90s. It's almost impossible to find it anymore. But there's 104 whiskies in it, from as old as I think the oldest is from the late 50s, and loads of them. So just shouting some off. Loads of them are from defunct distilleries now. There's Banff, Dunglass, Glenalbin, Killyloch, where are we? Melbourne, Brora. Where else have we got? Some. That's Glendon.
So
Dallas Dew. So that was like a really. There was only over 500 bottles of the stuff, and you get the whole list with it of all the whiskies that's in it. So sorry, I was just filling a gap, Stuart, because you were away
dealing with the dogs.
Animals, so I went back to answer your other question about another whiskey that sort of
excited you.
It excited us is purely because what you're drinking there. There's only other 500 bottles, so there's no many people in the world had a chance to drink it. There's probably very rarely ever an opportunity where you'll get that many whiskies all coming together, resulting, and it's quite a journey in a glass.
So, sticking with independent bottlers and possibly.
Oh, I don't pour you one.
No, it's because I had the water in it.
Ah, sorry.
Sticking with the independent bottlers and possibly being boring. I know we were saying obviously they don't have the same limitations as bigger companies, the distilleries, who want whiskies a certain way, like Dalmore. They want a certain colour, they want a certain consistency, or Macallan or whoever. But do you think there is a point where you've had so many red wine finished whiskies, you've had so many rum finished whiskies or sherry matured whiskies from independent bottlers that there becomes a point where your palate, it ends up becoming, is it all tasting the same? Like we had this discussion last night as well. We fired through your dad's quite fond of a sherry whiskey, and we had a lot of sherry whiskies, and none of them were bad in their own right. It's just, for me at a point, I get sherry fatigue so quick, and then it all just starts tasting like sherry, like dried fruits, Christmas cake. So do you think there's an issue there? Like, do you think there's maybe a little bit of constraint from the Scottish Whisky Association, so they're now allowed mezcal? Do you think there needs to be more of this experimentation? Because I had that Mackmira green tea, I always come back to that. I bought a bottle of that through Somerton Whisky Club when I was with them, and then I bought another bottle actually because I really enjoyed it. I thought it was something completely unique, matured.
That was the Swedish stuff, wasn't
it? Matured in green tea cask or green tea. So do you think there's only so much red wine matured finishes or wood finishes that you can have, or do you think it's still quite exciting?
Personally, I think it's still quite exciting, and the reason I would say that, and I'll use the supermarket here or any wine merchant actually, go down and see how many different red wines there are, see how many different white wines there are, rosy wines, how many dessert wines there are, how many. There's no end of casks.
Yeah.
That are going to have different flavour outputs in it. So I never used to be a fan really of red wine. I think when they first started doing them, I always found it either worked for me or it didn't work. Now I find the quality and the influence is getting better and better, so I quite like. But I think because red wine or any kind of wine, because you're talking sweet wines, you're talking dessert wines, there is so much variety of wines across the world that, you know, the whiskey industry is hardly ever going to touch a reasonable sample of them, because it's just an immense market.
Do you think? So I kind of get bored of the amount of finishes that there are, because sometimes I think they're finishing it. Maybe they are finishing it to elevate it, but I think they're trying to. At times, I think they're trying to hide something, because I'm quite cynical, quite a skeptic. What's wrong with maturing it in bourbon or in the sherry for the full time, or I don't know. Maybe that's just me. I just think there seems to be a lot of finishes at the moment, and I can't quite put my finger on why. And a lot of the time it does seem to be red wine, and it's just something that's quite a nondescript red wine. It's just red wine barrique. It doesn't give you anything. So for me, sometimes I get a bit bored with that.
But I think I've said this story a long time ago on here before. I remember a good 20 odd years ago, doing a tasting down at Cadenheads in Springbank, and we were sat in this lovely room with a big old table and we got a whiskey. Well, we got several whiskies, but one particular whiskey they brought out, they poured all of us that were there and then asked, and everybody was sort of looking at each other, and I think we all more or less at the same time came out with, that's not very good at all. And a guy said, no, that's fine, we'll move on to the next one. So he brought out the next one, and most of us were, that's quite nice. What's that? And the story was, it was the same whiskey as the one we had before, but they transferred it to port pipes for a period of, I can't remember, it was 12 or 18 months or whatever. So if a whiskey doesn't mature properly because there's an issue, bearing in mind this is all down to chemistry, because there's an issue in the cask, then if you can rescue it by transferring it to another cask, finishing it in another cask, then is that hiding bad whiskey, or is that whiskey just not matured well enough to be put on the market?
I suppose it depends what you're getting. If it's matured in port or wine, and you're only getting those port and wine characters, or like sherry, then all you're tasting is the cask rather than the whiskey, really.
Yeah, okay, that's a different argument.
Aye, but so I'd like to ask, Gav's saying he's struggling to hear us still. He changed computers, but the volume's still very low, so it might just be the mic not picking us up. I'm trying to speak louder, Gav, so I'm hoping you'll hear me. So I want to ask everybody, like, if you can remember the kind of first whiskey that excited you. I know what my answer is, the first whiskey that excited me. But yeah, I'd like to see what everybody else is, and then I'll ask you as well once we've read out some comments. So Phil's saying the problem with moving away from the vatting of whiskies, is that vatting or batting? Yeah, vatting of whiskies matured fully in bourbon and sherry, which gives layers of complexity. The heavy use of short finishes undermines some whiskey. Yeah. So basically what we're kind of saying, like, yeah, it could be a poor whiskey and they might elevate it, but then are you only getting the cask rather than the whiskey? PRB, I don't know who PRB is, but he said, what about Lambrini? Or they said, what about Lambrini? Yeah, Lambrini's great. Yeah. Phil then said, red wine finishes definitely don't always work for me. They can become too tannic very quickly. And I think that's why some wine finishes do. Like, I remember I had a Rioja Blair Athol from the Pot Still. It was bottled for the Pot Still's birthday. Absolutely fantastic. But then other red wines, yeah, I do get bored where it's just red wine barrique. Whereas the Glenallachie from Seven Sons that I gave you the other night, that specifically said Brandy de Jerez. Like, it specified what cask it was in.
Yeah, they usually do.
red wine full maturation and can work well, but for me some finishes can be too much.
Mm.
See, that's quite interesting. Yeah, so I suppose over time the red wine will dull down. But yeah, if you're just finishing it for 16 months, it probably can be too intense. The one I go back to is that Altmore from Thompson Bros, the 16-year-old. That's 16-year-old in red wine, the mystery bottle, and that, yeah, it was fantastic. I was expecting it to be a lot worse. Gav's saying first Talisker for his kind of whiskey that excited him.
Okay.
So I think the first whiskey that really excited me was probably the Glendronach 33 from here, or
That's a long time ago.
that was a long time ago. Or there was this Bowmore that we had. This was me and a couple of mates. We were up at Kiltarlity, or Kilterlity, near Inverness. We were staying in some lodges for New Year, and we had some Bowmore. And I can never remember the name of it or the style of it, but I just remember being like, I was like, this is really an exciting whiskey because of the peat, because of whatever cask it was in. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. What about you? Can you remember the first whiskey that excited you?
Excited. I'm not so sure. I never used to be into whiskey at all. And the first whiskey that sort of came on my radar that made me think, oh, maybe there is something to this, because my dad enjoyed it, my uncle, my brother would have it, and I was like, how can you touch that stuff? And it was actually that it was that Signatory Supreme. My dad had a bottle in the 90s, and my mum accidentally knocked it over when she was dusting or something, and some of it got lost, so that forced it to be drunk, and I got to try that then, and I remember thinking then that, wait a minute, there's
something to this.
there's maybe a something to this, and I just started sort of slowly. Well, now I've got a room full of the stuff. It's
So that's Chris just saying that your dad's watching, but he can't type in live chat. That's fine. So hiya John. Last night was fun. Thank you for the drams. I've not brought any over for Stevie.
might as well get.
So I think, like we touched on, suppose it's where you are in your journey. Like, I find supermarket whiskey boring, but I also find some independent, maybe not independent bottlers boring, but I just find the kind of flood of certain cask finishes, wood finishes boring. But then I also think there's a step above us as drinkers. I think there's a whiskey geek, like a proper, and I don't just mean people who are into whiskey and say they're whiskey geeks. Like, I am not a whiskey geek. I don't know enough about it. Like, I definitely don't know. But I mean the people who are chasing fermentation times, yeast types. They're actually going right into the nitty gritty of it. They probably look at our stuff, the stuff that we're buying, and probably think that's pretty boring. The people who are chasing closed distilleries, who are chasing gems, unicorns, that type of person, I think they're out there. They're definitely out there.
But is that a geek, or is that a wee bit about living the dream? Because I try to. I've got a couple of, like, I've got a 21-year-old Caperdonic there, but there is something about getting if you can get your hands on something that is, no longer
A silent distillery.
made, a silent distillery that it happens a lot with the sort of old grain whiskies. You end up with a whiskey that somebody made like 50 years ago, and they thought they were making
Blend fodder.
run of the mill, whatever, but they would never live long enough to know that actually was kept, and it was matured, and it was set aside because it was maturing to be a something rather unique and special. I don't know. I don't know if that makes you a geek, but you could argue, like, I've got a collection of Dalmores. Does that make me a geek? I've got a collection of Bladnochs. For a while, you you were buying all the, what's the place out Fife? You were buying.
Daft Mill.
Yeah, you were a Daft Mill geek. I mean, you literally were a
Yeah.
Daft Mill geek.
I mean, I wouldn't say having but having a selection or having a collection. I wouldn't say that's you a geek. I would say that's you just got a preference and you like the way it maybe looks or whatever. I wouldn't say that's a geek. I mean people, not just people who are chasing Milburn or Glenvoar or any of these coast distilleries, but people who are going to old blends like White Horse, even Old Grouse. They're going back to the 70s, the 80s, and these aren't expensive whiskies, but they're exploring a different avenue from when whiskey used to be different. I mean, blend content back then used to be a high malt content.
Lucky bastards is what I would say. Are they geeks or just lucky to have the money to be able to do it?
Alan says Lefroy was first Scotch to grab my attention. Still buy the odd bottle of their cask strength.
Whoa.
Yeah, Lefroy's definitely
that is a big beast of a.
It's definitely
one to catch your attention.
An exciting whiskey. Surge Hunter brings up a great point. Hopefully you can hear me in the mic. He says whiskey is only as boring as the company you keep whilst enjoying it. So I don't know if he's
well said. Well said.
He's had some of the best conversations of his life whilst enjoying a dram together.
Well, we come on to this a bit later on, actually.
He says he's loving the wallpaper. Yeah, this room, this is Stevie's whiskey room. I'd love to show you around it, but the camera's kind of fixed in place. It's very well put together. He also says we're different levels of geeks. Yeah. I suppose.
It depends on your definition of geek. We got 200 and odd bottles of whiskey in here beside us.
Yeah.
And is for a lot of people that's like,
yeah,
oh my god, he's some sort of freak. I don't have a drink problem. I've got loads of it.
Gav says different yeasts are interesting. Yeah, I think there's definitely some of the things that Thompson. What I liked about Thompson Bros when they were bringing out their 5-year-old whiskies, they were all quite different whiskies, different maturation, different octaves, but also different fermentation times, different yeast. So that's quite exciting to me because you're not just getting. But some people like it. Some people like an Ardbeg 10 just to be an Ardbeg 10. But you're getting consistency.
Well, that's the only reason they like it, because it is Ardbeg 10.
But that then, like you say, you seldom buy the same bottle twice. That's because once you've had it, it does become yesterday's news.
But that's me. There are loads of whiskey buyers out there, and I know some myself that
buy the same.
They will, because it's they swear by it. It's they're not enthusiastic enough to go like collecting and exploring all that sort of stuff. But when such and such is a good price, they'll buy 4 or 5 bottles of it because that's their favourite. And by the way, you tend to like all the youngsters.
Yeah, young
anyway,
whiskies.
Yeah.
Surge Hunter says 200 bottles. Where did the rest of them go?
You got on well with Epstein.
That's how we get us cancelled. So I've got a question for the chat, and then also for Stevie. I can't really think of an answer for myself, but I'll try and come up with one. But is there a whiskey that everyone finds kind of exciting or everyone loves, but you find boring? I think I know what yours might be, but I think it's more a preference thing.
Aye, it's no. I think you're right. It's no that the whiskey's boring, because the remarkable thing about whiskey is you give the same thing to enough different people. They won't all taste the same thing. They won't all get the same reaction of, oh, that reminds me of this, that. They won't have the same memory interactions with it. They won't get the same impact on nosing it. So that's just taking one whiskey and splitting it between a group of people. It will be a different journey for every single one of those people. What was your question?
Is there a whiskey that everyone loves that you find boring? or a distillery.
Yeah. Well, there's my dad quite likes his Glenallichys, and I'm not going to say it's boring because it's not about it being boring. For me, it's just got a level of peppery spiciness that I find hard to push beyond. But when I do, I can appreciate the whiskey that's there. But it's not it's not one I would sort of choose to go back to. Is it boring? Absolutely not. But it's just not my. It's just not for me.
Yeah, I suppose the boring topic is quite difficult, but it's just it is something that I've been feeling recently with whiskey. Um, just maybe in a slump or something myself. Just but certain at times I just feel like there's a lot of repetition. So maybe that's where the topic came from. But yeah, I don't know. I think one for me is Ardnamurchan. I find Ardnamurchan very boring. As a whiskey, I don't think it's.
Right.
And a lot of people.
I've only had one.
Yeah, the sherry.
Well, I've only had that.
A lot of people enjoy it, and I have had an Ardnamurchan that I've enjoyed, but it's not something the reason that I've been buying them is to try and get why people are.
But there's not that many of them, is there?
Oh, there's loads.
Is there?
Yeah, they've got loads of different cask strength expressions. They're trying different. They are trying different experiments, but maybe I've just still not tried enough. I did have a golden barley one that I really enjoyed from the Good Spirits Company, but I just find maybe the initial overhype of Ardnamurchan, I found that boring. That's what got to me. I found the constant praise of it. Maybe I was the same with Daft Mill, probably. And people probably think the same. They might get bored by Daft Mill, constant bourbon, similar.
By the way,
profiles.
Did you say they're releasing
16-year-old?
their oldest one?
Yeah,
today.
It's a bit
so far.
too much. I think Berry Bros are taking a bit of a liberty with their pricing. I think £175 for a 16-year-old cask strength is. I bought the 15-year-old at 150, but it's just they need to. The market's not there. We're not. People aren't spending as much as they used to on whiskey. People haven't got that expendable cash as much. But anyway, that's a different topic. Phil says my brother-in-law is a one distillery guy through and through. He doesn't like exploring other distilleries. He hates that I make him try new things. See, yeah, that's boring to me. But he's probably quite content.
But if he's happy and I mean, you hear a lot. It's quite interesting if you're ever in like in a whiskey shop and tourists come in, like Americans or whatever, and they're like, we're, and they just order cases of this, and it's just because they know they like it, and I can get that to a certain extent because how many times have you bought? I know I have bought a whiskey that I'm always looking for something different all the time. As I say, I rarely buy the same thing. Exactly the same thing twice. But in doing so, you can pay a lot of money for something that is quite disappointing when you open it, and you can pay 50-60 quid for something that you're not expecting to be great and is absolutely superb. That signatory Bunnahabhain I had last year and I've still got it's
yeah,
it's remarkable.
Wraith Dragon says Lefroy Quarter Cask was the one which made me realise there was a whole other level to whiskey. Yeah, Lefroy with their level of peat and how they do things. Yeah, definitely. Surge Hunter, I buy a bottle and if I love it, I buy one or two spares for the rainy day stash. I have a great vault of excellent juice now. Yeah, I mean, I have done that on occasion. The Untold Riches Bunnahabhain, I got two of them. I've got one left and sealed after finishing the first one. The McMyra Green Tea, same one sealed.
You still got one of them?
After finishing the first one. So there is a few exceptions, especially when things like that I know will go quick or they'll not come back. Like the McMyra is no longer a distillery. I don't think they're making whiskey anymore, and then the Bunnahabhain Untold Riches, that was just a steal for at the time, and they won't do that again. He's also saying Glenmorangie is the most drab, one-dimensional boring whiskey brand in my opinion. Sorry. Well, I kind of agree. So you don't need to be sorry. I agree with it because I don't think they're.
they're needing somebody new in there.
Yeah, I think Bill Lumsden, he's probably a great guy, probably very knowledgeable, way more knowledgeable than me, but the direction that Ardbegs went and the direction Glenmorangies went, and it might be LMVD or whatever it is, the Louis, whoever owns it, directing it, but to a certain brand that they want to put out. But yeah, Glenmorangie, their marketing, their advertising, same with Ardbeg, those gimmicky bottles. Don't get me wrong, the Glenmorangie Milshon, I remember we both had a bottle of that, we really enjoyed it. But then it came out with things like Tale of Cake, Tale of Tokyo, Tale of the Forest, and
The
just
Tailor of Forest was absolutely rank.
um,
It really was.
Neil says a lot of people talk about the classic laddie, but I don't get it. Yeah, there is a lot of hype for Brook Laddie. That one that comes in the blue tin that you can get in the supermarket. I've actually not tried it in a while, so I can comment, but there is definitely a lot of hype with that. I think at one point people could probably say the same about Ardbeg 10. Phil saying Wolfburn, couldn't get my head around that distillery at all. No,
I've never. That's a good point.
I tried some. Had the Lang skip or something, like long ship Viking kind of thing, and it was not great. I've had some samples and no,
It's like another Annandale, the Man of Swords.
yeah.
I've never like quite got that either. I just.
The thing
But there has to be somebody out there liking it because they're still there.
the thing with Wolfburn is at the time you already had Highland Park doing a Viking marketing, so why would you go and have another? It's boring. Willie's here, evening all, a bit late, but had a plumbing emergency to deal with.
Oh no.
I hope you got it sorted. I hope there wasn't any leaks, because I know how heartbreaking that can be, happening to myself. And funny enough, I was actually round at my brother's yesterday, helping him out with re-plumbing some pipe in the loft. That sounds quite innuendo almost. But yeah, he changed from gravity fed a couple of years ago to a combi boiler, and all the pipes were just left in a state, so we kind of tidied that up. Surge Hunter, I love the early laddie releases and the 10-year-old, but the general release isn't as great as it was. Yeah, and that's also a thing. There's probably whiskey has maybe went somewhat downhill, and I can even see it from the time that I've been drinking whiskey. How long's that been now? Maybe 10-15 years I've been drinking whiskey, probably 15 at a push. Maybe 15. And there has been a quality change. I'm not saying all whiskey's been changed quality, but there has a quality change.
I'm not seeing that at all. But you tend to buy younger whiskies than I do. In fact, I'll counter my own argument there. I used to turn my nose up at the younger whiskies as well, and wasn't sure why you were like sort of really getting. But I had a bottle. I'm trying to think where it is. Is that it there? A Dalhuin. Is it? It's
7-year-old.
Thompson Brothers,
Yeah.
and it's 7-year-old. And I put off opening it for ages and ages and ages. And then I finally, I always try to take a wee curveball when I go to visit my dad and his pal Ian. We have a wee whiskey night, and I took it, and it was like, it tastes unbelievably mature for its age.
Yeah.
So. Yep, other way. There you go, that way.
Quite awkward. It's kind of focusing on you a wee bit.
That's that, and I'm like, how the hell did they get such maturity into like such a young whiskey? And I think people are constantly striving. Bearing in mind, this is all down to chemistry. At the end of the day, it's all down to chemical reactions and stuff. They're constantly. I don't think I could say that. Yeah, I've bought for sure. I've bought stuff where I've been disappointed in, but that's not to say. I don't think the whiskey industry, the quality's getting worse. I think the choice is far greater. I think there's so much of it out there actually how can you get fed up with it? Because there's constantly new stuff to try. You just look at, you get all these emails coming in about what's been released, and you're like, Jesus, if my pockets were like
endless.
you know, I was like today. I was, uh, you know, some cracking deals around just now. So I'm not finding that at all. I'm not seeing it.
I think like where I'm saying it's like somewhat changed. Like that Dalmore cigar malt is a fine example of it. 2005, that most likely was bottled
Mm.
from the stamp. Compared to now's cigar malt, there's not a patch on it, and that's the only thing. I know
Well,
they changed things.
it's a different recipe because it was discontinued.
Yeah, I understand that, but I mean, I think in certain areas there has been a slight decline, but then there's also been improvements for sure. There's definitely been improvements. Um, Willie's saying, oh, the laddie may be hype, but Port Charlotte is great every time. Yeah, I've had a few Port Charlottes that I've enjoyed. Surge Hunter's saying Loch Lomond has become such a gem of a whisky distillery over the last decade. I'm still not on the Loch Lomond train, and I would say that's one that I'm bored of the hype of. But if you're saying that it is good, then I really need to get the amount of people that tell me about Loch Lomond, and I just keep
Loch
overlooking it.
Lomond's actually the only distillery in Scotland it that is it's actually replicated in Japan.
Oh really?
So yeah, because in Loch Lomond's the only distillery in Scotland that have got a different stills and different processes, so they can produce different styles of whiskey from the same
Yeah. Like grain.
Loch Lomond. And I'm not talking about just like peat drying some of it. Actually, you know, long neck, short neck. So Loch Lomond's the only distillery in Scotland that have got the capability to produce more than one
Yeah.
style of whiskey.
And that should interest me because it's unique.
I've had it, yeah, and they're all. That's why some of them you've got Loch Lomond in Schmurren. You've got I've got a 25-year-old Loch Lomond up there. That was a British Open. That's signed by Colin Montgomery, a British Open one. I've never opened that, but there's another one somewhere.
So Phil's saying Bowmore is potentially my least favourite distillery these days. Oh. Yeah, Bowmore is potentially my least favourite distillery these days. Their tour is great, but their core range of whisky is terrible, and I'd agree with that. I think Bowmore's drastically went downhill. Welsh Toro saying I'm not on the Loch Lomond train either. And then the Surge Hunters saying I would recommend trying Inchmuren, Croft. I'm going to butcher this. Croftonega or Inchfad. Very tasty indeed.
I've seen
like,
those.
I'm pretty sure.
Is that the peated version?
I think Inchfad's peated. I'm not sure about Inchmuren. Crofting. I don't know how you say it.
Crofton G, is it not?
Crofton G.
Hang on, I have to excuse myself because I'm going to have to pour myself another one of my own whiskies.
So yeah, I think another point that I would consider with where whiskey becomes boring is possibly your palate, and a couple things with palate. The fatigue, which we've touched on before, and I get sherry fatigue like so quick. Peat fatigue, not so much. I don't get that as quick as the sherry, but I still get it. And then also, I think things can start tasting similar. And me doing my whiskey reviews when I'm taking notes and things, there are a few tasting notes and from cask finishes or from certain maturation that I get from a few whiskies that I feel like are repeating themselves. And I think that's something that does get boring, but then that might just be an argument for something else, just fatigue. Because last night was a prime example of it, and I think even you were getting there maybe just towards the end with the Glenrothes, just the sherry after sherry, maybe getting a bit fatigued, getting a bit not. Boring isn't necessarily the right word, but it does become boring once you've had so many of them.
Yeah, there's a 25-year-old Glenrothes, and there is another one that he had. It's a Glengarrick actually, and I can't remember exactly what it was. Really heavily sherried, and by the way, both of them tasty drams. But my comment, what it made me think is that you wouldn't taste that and go, oh, that's a Glengarrick. It actually could be
Yeah.
any number of different whiskies that have been done in that way. Don't get me wrong, the result is fantastic, but if you like that profile. But it made me think that actually, yeah, it could. Okay, that could equally be a. I don't know, a Glenrothes. It could equally be a this that
Yeah,
or
the sherry
because it's
influence.
actually so. Um,
But
but
it's
like,
this Dalyuan,
yeah, this is
I
what
think this has been 7 years in the sherry cask, but you're still getting I still get some like kiwi. I remember getting the kiwi. I remember getting a little bit of waxiness. I still get Dalyuan character through this.
I smell that.
And I've said it before. I think, I said it last night. I think certain distilleries can stand up to it, like possibly Springbank, Dalyuan, Clinleash. There are certain distilleries, even peated distilleries, but there's certain distilleries that are bold enough to withstand that heavy cask influence. Whereas other distilleries, certain Speysides, they're quite soft, and the majority of flavours that you'll get are the sherry or the cask. Crofton Asia, Crofton Asia, Crofton Gia.
There probably is a Crofton Asia somewhere.
It's heavily peated. Inchfad is peated and Inchmurren is unpeated. Welsh Toro saying the Croft one can be very good, but its indie stuff is highly
Welsh Toro, he's been on before.
highly variable depending on age and cask. One big issue he's saying with modern appreciation of whiskey is the quality of cask. They are nowhere near as good as they were, and yeah, that's what I've kind of said. With regards to things not being the same quality, like yeah, I think the casks aren't. I don't know when it started, but we've spoke about it before, where they would just put sherry into casks to wash them out, and then send them over to Scotland.
Well, they used to. They used to actually pour sherry out because you get more money. You know, sherry no selling very well in modern times. They would pour it out because they could get more for the cask.
And then the quality of the wood,
But
same.
it does. But if you think about it, though, it's bound to happen at some point because the demand outstrips the supply. So what does it do? It drives up the price, making the whiskey more expensive. It means that casks are used maybe a bit more than they should be, because quite simply, what is the alternative? You know, there's the casks. Bourbon's a great example because every 3 years bourbon like out, so a cask is available, but other stuff is a lot longer. So if you think about it, once you absorb what's available, you're waiting on like the next bunch of casks becoming available, and there is bound to be a point where they're maybe not as fresh as they used to be. And I don't know how, if let's say it's a sherry cask, just it could be any cask, but let's say it's a sherry cask. If the market for sherry isn't producing enough sherry casks to keep the whiskey industry going, then it's going to have a knock-on effect. If the rules changed about bourbon to like say, oh well, it has to be 5 years now or whatever it was, then you would see a reduction in availability of bourbon casks. So at some point, there's not an endless supply of casks. So bound to be a knock-on effect in terms of
quality.
yeah, there has to be just
Right.
purely because of availability.
Welsh Turtles is saying even ex-bourbon casks, a good 12-year-old ex-bourbon cask is hard to find. Yeah, I think sometimes it can be. So with regards to like fatigue, I know it is really good. Do you find that you get fatigued with certain whiskies easily? Like I said, it's open to the chat as well. Like sherry's one that I so easily get fatigued with. I can have 3 sherry whiskies in a row, and I don't want any more sherry for 2 weeks or a month. Sometimes it gets like that. I don't know if you're the same with peat. I think an easy one for a lot of people is peat.
I think for me, peat is, well, you know, I had a reasonable collection of Ardbegs, for example. I think peat for me comes and goes.
Yeah.
And I would probably say the last couple of years I've been kind of a wee bit more off the peated ones.
Need a trip to Isla again.
Yeah. Well, in fact, I'll tell you what makes me try a peated one again. When I have that Signatory Supreme,
Yeah.
there's a slight peaty maritime to that, and pretty much every time I go to that and have it, I think, oh, I'm going to go for a.
So that's a great example of how blends used to be.
Yeah.
Like blends used to have, even like shop bought blends used to have high malt content and used to have a little bit of peat in them from whether it be the Highlands, not
It was the
necessarily
other way
Islay.
about, it was low malt content because it'd be mostly grain.
No, it's
Plus a
mostly
little
grain
malt.
now. But back in the 70s and 80s, no one was drinking malt, so it was high malt content because it went to blend. But now it's the other way about. It's high grain content. That's why the 70s, 80s blends are better than, majority of the time better than, or more sought after than today's blends. Like look at that for example. But yeah, you're going to have peat in there. Willie's saying sherry finishes are seldom satisfactory in my opinion. Yeah.
I like it. I must admit, I do like a good sherry finish. I do think it, and I say this to my dad quite a lot. It is easy to think that there's nothing better than sherry finishes out there if you like that flavour profile, but there are other things to try, and it's really just about how open you are to trying some of those other things. And by the way, you might try some of them and not like them and think, well, what's the point of wasting my money? I know I like the sherry stuff, so I'm always going to go for that. So it's a kind of, yeah, you know what you like, stay with what you like, experiment, and be prepared to like buy some whiskies that you maybe didn't like as much. I mean, I like a virgin oak a finish, so nothing fancy at all, just a good oak cask.
So I think what we'll touch on next with regards to Boren, and I think it was Surge Hunter that mentioned it earlier, was the company. So one of the things for me, and probably for everyone, hopefully everyone unless you're like extremely introverted, is what makes whiskey exciting is the events, the tastings, the company, because you could go to a tasting with whiskey that you're not that enamoured with, and it could still be a good tasting. The whiskey might be not that great, but it might be a good tasting because of the people you're with, the experiences, the connections you make. So I'm definitely in favour of that being exciting.
Right, so wait, I'm quite bored tonight. So right, so all my whiskies tasting shit. Thank you.
So all your whiskey tastes crap because of the.
I'm always I. This is one I wished I had another bottle of.
Yeah.
That.
Well, it is.
It just knocks my socks off how they've got such maturity into such a young whiskey.
It is still available at Kinnaird Head Whiskies. They've still got stock of it.
Aye.
So I might.
What are you getting? 15%.
So I might I don't know.
That is
I
just.
don't know how many bottles I've got, but
To think, I put off. I had it
I know.
for a long time, and I put off opening it. I thought.
So this was a bottle that my wife and I got when we got Stevie, and Louise thought it wasn't going to be her dad's style, and she was quite right. Looking at it on the label, definitely not your style, but I knew there would be. I knew it would. Welsh Turtle says, I think the growth of blended malts is one of the interesting areas in whisky, mostly
Yes.
good value too.
Aye.
Yeah, I think Teaspoon is a different area for me, but yeah, definitely proper blended malt and even just blended whisky. I do like the variation and the experience, and I think that's quite interesting.
Yeah, I think now that you're talking like single malt blends, so we're moving away from blended whiskey, which is X% grain, so much malt, but single malt blends. There's some cracking ones.
But even grain, like we've been exploring a lot of grain this year.
Yep, and grain's the same. There's that Thompson Brothers 47. The minimum age of the whiskey that's in there is 47-year-old. And it's lovely stuff. I bought my dad what's the one at the Clyde? Is it Ardgowan Distillery? They're producing the Clyde Built.
Right, Clyde Built.
So while they're waiting on their whiskey maturing, they're doing some blending. And a 27-year-old blended malt whiskey for like 90 something pound, and I'll tell you what, it's absolutely nectar.
Yeah, and it had a 33-year-old Ben.
It's actually it's a mix of Island, Speyside, and 33-year-old Ben Rennes for 90 something pound. It is absolutely stunning if you like that.
So that's
profile.
That's a question then. Like, I've been exploring more blends, or trying to explore more blends, because for one, there has been a bit of boredom set in. Do you think that your exploration of grain has been a similar thing, or do you think it's just been a happy coincidence that you've went down, because you've started buying more grains, you've started exploring more grains to take to your dad's as well, to give him? Do you think that's a...
There's the two of them they're unrelated. If I take the single malt blend, and I can't even remember what started me on it. I really can't remember which one it was. But you have to admire, or in my opinion, somebody that can take whiskies of quite different profiles and find the right level of each to put together to produce something that actually stands out and is quite remarkable. To me, that is nothing but praise. To be able to do that, I think is just is just amazing. So that's the multi blend. So I've got a lot of respect, and I do find myself quite often when I'm looking for whiskey online, I do find myself actually clicking on the malt blends just to see what's out in terms of malt blends. The grain whiskey, I'm not actually sure quite how that happened. Oh, I do remember how it happened. It was a few years ago at the Speyside Whiskey Festival. What's their name just came on the scene? Dramful were just in the early days of promoting themselves, and I went along to a tasting of Dramful, and we had 5 whiskies there, one of which was a 40-odd-year-old grain whiskey. And my wife was with me, and I can't remember who else was there, but she was driving. So I was getting her whiskies because she doesn't like the stuff at all. But for some reason she tasted the grain whiskey, and the guy actually gave her a cup. We ended up leaving the car there because, and she had the guy was quite happy to give her them because she wasn't touching the other stuff. So I think my grain journey started definitely with Dramfull. And I'll never forget it. And I've certainly bought and I've got a few grains in my collection now. And it's a different flavour profile, but it's a it's.
I think that's why I started going for. I bought that. I think it was a White Horse or something like that. One of those old blends, and I bought that because I was maybe getting a bit bored of kind of single malts and what we're having now. I bought the Glenvoar because I wanted to try an older distillery that had been closed for a while, and also I was getting a little bit fatigued with what was coming out. And then grains is where I've kind of progressed to, and malts still blends, but grains is where I've progressed to get a different avenue, so that one maybe boring's the wrong word, but maybe fatigue's a better word. So I'm not getting fatigued with what I'm drinking, and so I'm keeping my palate fresh. Someone actually suggested on our comment the other day was like trying different sherries to get an appreciation of how actually sherry is, the different expressions.
But that is a good point, because I think a lot of people think sherry is all about the Christmas cake and stuff like that. But if you go and look at somewhere that sells sherry and look at the different styles of sherry, you know, there's pale, cream, there's dry, there's, you know, they're not all about the Christmas cakes and stuff like that. So I think there's another thing comes into it when it comes to sherry, is there's something draws people to something that's darker.
Yeah.
And it's nothing to do with
quality,
the whiskey, the quality or anything, but people are you line something up and people are drawn to the dark and mysterious. They are. And that's where, like, you know, a lot of these dark sherry ones, it's like they just go because like people are drawn to them.
I suppose, like, so when I'm thinking about this is obviously a hobby or what would you call it, an interest, a hobby, a passion. You've got people who are massively into kind of craft beer, massively into coffee. I've got a friend who's got
Lego,
but I've got a friend who's got a huge coffee. Shout out to Thomas. I've got a friend who's got a huge coffee setup, all different variations of how to make coffee. And I imagine it's the same. It's definitely the same with craft beer, because I've had it before. You can get fatigue from the beer. You get fatigue from coffee, where it all just starts mixing together and just like, this coffee just tastes like coffee, this beer just tastes like beer. So I suppose there's that as well, and it's maybe variety's the spice of life, and that's the way to make it less boring.
I think you've hit the nail. The one thing that I don't think I can't see anywhere envisaging is getting fatigue when it comes to whiskey, because I do think, regardless of whatever else we've said, I'm not buying enough volume of it, right? So I pick and choose what I buy, and you try to get something different and something that'd be interesting. So I'm never going to run out of options in terms of what I want to. So I'm never going to get tired. I can't see any possibility of getting tired, because there is just look at the releases every other day. It's just like, wow, oh, what would that be like? And you know, ice wine casks, Sauvignon Blanc casks. And yeah, they might not be to everybody's cup of tea, but it's you know, without that experimentation, without that people striving to, and this is where I give praise to the indie bottlers, without that willingness to try and do something different, would a whiskey then it would be a relatively boring market, because we'd have nothing but distillery produced regular static 12-year-old this, 18-year-old that, 20-year-old that. So that would be it, and that would that
boring.
would cause fatigue, and that would be boring.
So then,
So God bless independent bottlers as far as I'm concerned. And if that forces some distilleries to rethink their strategy as well,
yeah, so be it.
then so be it. And if people like Signatory, and I don't care what anybody says, nobody's chucking whiskey out and bottling it and putting it out into the world not to make money on it, right? So if a big boy comes along and says, "Oh, yeah, right," they can't afford to do it because their business has grown so big and their overheads are so big that they actually can't compete with that, and that's okay. Don't compete with it.
Yeah.
Leave it to them, because it's an area of the marketplace you can't compete with, but it doesn't mean it's not possible.
So we are currently drinking this 7-year-old Dalyun from Thompson Bros, which we both find quite exciting because it's young, high ABV, naturally presented, and the Dalyun still comes through the sherry. We'd love to know what you guys are still drinking, and my next question would be, what makes whiskey exciting or memorable? I think the memorable thing
That's easy.
is an easy one, but what makes it exciting? I think what makes whiskey exciting is a difficult one. What makes it memorable is probably quite easy. One example I have is when we had that 58-year-old or the 56-year-old that I brought over from one of the guys at work.
Glen Grant.
Yes, and it was a fine whiskey. It was nothing particularly special, but the memorable part of it was sharing it with you and sharing this whiskey and having something of that calibre. It was matured or distilled in 1950 something, just post World War II.
Post World War II, and you're thinking, it makes you think about, wow, what were people's lives like then? They were coming through. You had the recession after the war, and
so that was memorable. But I would say I was also, like, when he mentioned he had that, I was also excited once he said, "Oh, I can get you a sample of it." So I think, that kind of goes hand in hand, I suppose. But do you know what makes whiskey exciting to you? What?
There's a couple of things. The first thing, and there will be whiskey drinkers out there that disagree with us, but for me, whiskey is best enjoyed shared.
I don't think anybody can disagree with that.
You know, there'll be a lot of people where whiskey is their staple drink with a beer chaser and stuff like that, and that's fine. But over the years, I've had.
Thanks for joining us. Somebody's away. Wraith Dragon, thank you.
I've had people come in and they're like, "Are you sure you want to give me that?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's because it's other people's reaction to it as well." It's so I very rarely have whiskey on one.
See, I do.
I know you do, and I do a wee bit, but it's quite rare. I'll go some other route because it's not the same. Yeah.
But what at the moment, if I was to say to you, what's exciting you, and this is a question for the chat as well, like, what makes whiskey exciting for you, but what's exciting you, like, currently in whiskey? Like, what is there that's maybe coming up that you're seeing that's exciting you?
I'm always looking forward to seeing what's coming out from independent bottlers next. That is the.
And you're not getting bored, because I got bored with Carnmore because they were churning out. You're not getting bored with the amount that Signatory's releasing.
No, yet. Because I can't buy it all, so how can I get bored from it?
Well, just the same with the Carnmore, like.
Yeah, but you can only pick and choose.
But then I ended up stopped buying from Carnmore purely because of how much they were picking out. So I was getting bored of how much they were releasing.
Yeah, but you weren't buying all of what they were releasing.
No, I wasn't.
So when you say that to me, I'm like, well, you know, yeah, Signatory could release, 50 over 2 months. I'm not going to buy all 50.
No.
But I'll tell you what, I'm going to buy a few of them because I know they're going to be damn good, so I don't mind.
So independent bottlers is currently what's exciting you, because I have seen definitely a shift in your collection. The top shelf pretty much remained constant, and your Dalmore collections remain constant. But there is a lot of more independent bottlers starting to creep in.
Yeah.
You look at this maybe 5 years ago, I think this would be more OBs, official bottlers.
Yeah.
Which is, And I suppose that does show that it's exciting to you because you're
Well,
buying
it is because they're providing a. You can even take a whiskey that you don't even like, and an independent bottler bottles it, and you get to try it, and all of a sudden you're like,
It's different.
it's different, and I think, yeah, yeah.
Well,
But what makes it special is also, as you say, I think the company does it. And I think you can have a whiskey that you try on your own, and you think, well, I've had whiskies in here, and um, some end up in the barrel there, and you have them, and you've not been like too impressed with them, and then like Brandon and Louise now and again, they'll do my whiskey pouring, and they'll come through, and I'll not know what it is, and I'm like, oh, what the hell's that? And they'll say, oh, it's such and such.
Changes it for you.
And I'm like, I've not touched that for a long time because I didn't think it was that great. So I think whiskey is vodka's vodka. Whiskey depends on your mood. It depends on your your palate, your
environment,
the environment. Your mood. It depends on a whole bunch of things. It's such an atmospheric drink, I think. Unlike, most other. Whiskey is so much influenced by other things.
So, I think we're going to answer it. I think we'll wrap up and we'll answer it. Now, I would be stupid to say that whiskey is boring because then I've not got a channel. What's the point in having a channel?
Well, you said it. You came up with it.
I think certain areas of whiskey are boring, but I don't think whiskey in a whole is boring. I think, like you said, it's the company you keep.
Well, look.
I know.
Right. Would you have who has shelves full of rum?
I know.
Vodka, gin. Yeah, I mean, we've got like a wee collection of gin there, but.
Aye.
But this is there's
nothing like it.
No, there isn't.
So I think, your environment. I think tastings, festivals. I think things like that keep it all exciting, and there are certain people that are trying to explore different avenues, trying to do different things, and I like that. So I don't think whiskey's boring. I just think it's where you are in your journey as well. I think, like, obviously supermarket whiskey, yes, for me that's boring because I don't tend to buy it.
Well, you're in a different place in your journey.
Yeah.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. But for some people,
yeah, whiskey's not boring.
Yeah. No, we were never going to debate. I don't think it was ever a debate about it being boring. I think you hit the nail on the head. It depends where you are in your whiskey journey, and it depends on how open or close-minded you are in terms of, the world's your oyster. There's certainly, in your lifetime, there is no shortage of opportunity to try all sorts of weird and wonderful stuff. It does help though when folk come to your house, like for a whiskey chat, when they bring something different, when they bring something along.
I know, I should have.
Instead of milking your collection, that helps.
You need to put a dent in it. You need to put a dent in your whiskey collection. It does somewhat worry me with like whiskey brokers when they can be selling to different companies almost the same stock, if not the same stock. But like we said, the likelihood of you buying the exact same bottles from two different companies.
Yeah, how many independent bottles of Tormore are you going to buy?
Well,
right.
Yeah.
So even if they are all buying the same, how many are you going to buy?
Yeah.
You're going to buy one, two.
I suppose that's true. So yeah, I think we're going to wrap up. I think.
Have we missed anybody's comments? Anybody? Because
no, I don't think so. I think
Are they all sleeping or?
I think that's we started to taper off.
Right.
I think we're at a natural end. So it's definitely thank you for watching from me and
Yeah, and thanks for listening to our drivel.
yeah. So yeah, whiskey's not boring. I hope you've enjoyed the live. I hope we've
I never
managed to.
thought it was. It was
I hope we've managed to kind of entertain you for a night.
hope you've enjoyed my whiskey, Stuart.
I have really enjoyed your whiskey. Definitely enjoyed your whiskey. So yes, we'll leave it there. I've been Stuart. That's been Stevie. And tonight we've been Whiskey Whims. You have been Whiskey Whims. So thanks for joining us.
I'm sorry.
We'll see you later.